longer, and eventually Amy and Janice fell in love. They are your typical childhood sweethearts.
I can safely say that I've literally known Amy all her life because when I was 7 years old, my family and I moved from the Bronx, New York, to New Milford, Connecticut, in Litchfield County. We both of our families were considered minorities at the time. Amy's family being the only African-American family on the block, and my family being the only Puerto Rican ones on the block. And pretty much the town, I mean, you know, our town, we're talking rural Connecticut. New Milford at that time was very, very underdeveloped, and it was mostly farmland, you know, corn stalks and whisker wheat. And so that definitely, I think, was one of the things that made our families bond.
The families were close and accepted Janice and Amy's relationship, but the idea that they would marry was still a hurdle.
It was important for me to let everybody know that I was completely in love with Janice and that we both wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, and I wanted to celebrate it, and I wanted for people to come and celebrate with us. And so at first, telling my parents that we were engaged and we were going to get married was a little tricky. And I think that my parents were still getting used to us being together because they still saw us as friends and as children who grew up together, and were still, adjusting to the idea that we were a couple. So then when I kicked it up a notch and said that we were going to get married, my father immediately kind of went to, oh, can you do that in this state? And went to the kind of logistics of it, and not really, willing to go there emotionally about what I had just said. And my mother didn't really say anything. So I was really quite disappointed. And originally one of my sisters was the only person at first who was like, oh, that's great, and I'm so happy for you.
It didn't take long for Janice and Amy's family to get used to the idea. And in June 2007, Janice and Amy tied the knot.
After a couple of months and everyone really getting used to the idea, everybody on both sides of our family were so excited for us and so happy for us. And the day was just, it was wonderful. My parents walked me down the aisle, and her brothers walked her down the aisle, and my two siblings were kind of my witnesses, and her two nieces. And so many people from both of our families were there, and it was wonderful because my parents know her extended family, but haven't necessarily seen many of them in many years, especially since her mom had passed away. And so it was an opportunity not just for my mom to celebrate with us, but my mom was also really excited to see her aunts and uncles who she hadn't seen in years, and to spend time with, just our families were excited to just spend time together. And my father just gave us a really wonderful toast about how happy he was to see us together, and how proud he was of both of us, and how he really felt like our union and our marriage was a really beautiful thing. And it was really great. It was a beautiful day.
It craves understanding, compassion, acceptance.
As lesbians, Janice and Amy are denied the right to legally marry in Connecticut. But all who love them acknowledge this ceremony as their wedding and wholeheartedly embrace their civil union as marriage.
Funny, adventurous, and exciting.
The word marriage, when you say that to people, everybody knows what that means. It brings up a feeling of a connection, a relationship, of a commitment. And civil union sounds to me very sterile and political, and some kind of term that's like a euphemism, and it doesn't have any meaning to me. It doesn't have any emotional meaning or connection to me, so I choose not to use it. It says that on the piece of paper that we got at Town Hall, but other than that, we had a wedding and we're married.
Amy and Janice ignore the term civil union. They feel it only serves to undermine their relationship. They consider themselves married and use that term to claim their legitimacy.
The civil union, unfortunately, it feels discriminatory because it somehow signifies that we're less than, and we are anything but less than. If we're good enough to pay taxes and to serve our country, to vote, to teach, to, be a social worker, be a teacher, an educator, a doctor, lawyer, they weren't good enough to be married. There's just no reason that we should be considered anything less. And I think, you know, we hear it in politics nowadays, you know, all the candidates are being asked, you know, do you support gay marriage? And I just think it's a ridiculous question. Marriage should be for any two people who are willing to make the lifelong commitment to honor and love and respect each other. And that's it. It shouldn't be a question of whether you're gay or straight. It's, you know, it's, to me, it's just as prejudicial as what was happening before the civil rights era.
Yeah, it's
you
separate but
yeah.
equal. There's no
yeah.
such thing as separate but equal.
Right.
You'd think we'd learned that a long time ago.
Exactly. In our hearts and in our minds and souls, we are married, and I defy anybody to say anything different.
John, a Presbyterian minister, and Bill, a businessman, met at a picnic.
We dated for several years, and at one point Bill's mother was dying of cancer in Norwalk, Connecticut, and we were driving down there. I've been doing AIDS work all of my adult life and just sort of felt surrounded by death and said, I think I want to adopt.
Before the year 2000, same-sex couples could not legally adopt, so John adopted Brittany as a single dad. She was just 5 months old.
I know my eyes flew open like, that is way too much. That's not an option for us. But it feels exactly the way it should be. The family that I've always wanted.
Newly minted dads Bill and John wanted to publicly legitimize their relationship. So they went up to Vermont with Brittany and applied for a civil union.
We went up there in 2003, and Brittany was our ring bearer with 2 of our dogs. And we had a very private civil union service there. So we did that for legal purposes and I think political purposes. But then we said there's no family around, so that's when we decided to get married in the more traditional sense.
And of God's commitment to them, without beginning or end.
Invited all of our friends and our family members and had the big party and the food and the ministers came, and even though it was not at all legally binding, that's the date that we remember, and that's what we consider our marriage, is the ceremony that happened in our backyard.
Still, as strong as their commitment was to each other, they had no legal protections in Connecticut. Neither their Vermont civil union nor their wedding celebration gave them the rights and recognition that marriage could.
It's the social coming out of your relationship, being recognized as a partnership and as a family. You know, it's almost 2 in 1. I adopted Brittany 2 years ago. Connecticut has a co-parent right and ability to have 2 people who are not related to be guardians of a single child. Not that they have to have a civil union or have to be married in some way, but that enabled us both to be recognized as Brittany's guardian.
But despite their struggles, Bill, John, and Brittany are just like every other family.
We do crazy things around the house. We go dancing, we yell
Try
and
to talk
scream.
French to the dogs.
I try to talk French to the dogs, but we all do crazy things around the house, and I just can't imagine my parents, and they didn't, at their age, at my age, doing fun, crazy things with their kids. And we do so many good times. But we're also very, we're pretty strict too.
What's engineer?
If I do bad on the test, they say like study more so that I can do better in school. So